I'm a writer. I know dialogue.
That's a fountain of conversation, man. That's a geyser.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Yes, provocative.
Welcome back to Booked on Rock, the podcast for those about to read and rock. Subscribe and give the podcast a 5-star review wherever you listen. The website is bookedonrock.com. We're back with another edition of The Dialogue, a chill and chat with authors, fellow podcasters, listeners, and more. And for this episode, I've got my good friends from the SeanGeek and FastFret podcast, Sean and Todd McGinity. So what do you think is the best-selling rock book of all time? In this episode, we're counting down the 20 best-selling rock books of all time according to an article by the website Book Authority. You can find them at bookauthority.org. They're the leading site for book recommendations. They've been featured on CNN and Forbes, among other places, and they came up with this list. I think you're going to be surprised by some of the books that make this list. I think you'll definitely be surprised by what is the biggest-selling rock book of all time. Maybe not. So let's get to it. We had a lot of fun with this one. These are the 20 biggest selling rock books of all time. So now, Sean, you have this list. I showed you the list. Todd, you don't know any of this, okay? So I guarantee you're not going to know what the number one, you're not going to guess the number one. There's no way, right? Sean, you remember what number one is?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Number 20, Unrequited Infatuations, a memoir by Stevie Van Zandt. 2021 memoir. Estimated 20,000 plus copies sold. Uncover never-before-told stories in this epic tale of self-discovery by a rock and roll disciple and member of the E Street Band. Unrequited Infatuations chronicles the twists and turns of Stevie Van Zandt's always surprising life. It is more than just the testimony of a globe-trotting nomad, more than the story of a groundbreaking activist, more than the odyssey of a spiritual seeker, and more than a master class in rock and roll, not to mention a dozen other crafts. It's the best book of its kind because it's the only book of its kind. 19 is The History of Rock and Roll, Volume 1, 1920 to 1963 by Ed Ward from 2017. Again, estimated 20,000 plus sold. He covers the first half of the history of rock and roll, sweeping and definitive narrative from the 1920s when the music of rambling medicine shows mingled with the songs of vaudeville and minstrel acts to create the very early sounds of country and rhythm and blues, to the rise of the first independent record labels post-World War II, and concluding in December 1963, just as an immense change in the airwaves took hold and the Beatles prepared their first American tour. Rock Trivia Madness, 60s to 90s rock music trivia and amazing facts by Bill O'Neill and Ray Connor. That's number 18. Came out in 2017, estimated 20,000 plus copies sold. I picked out a few entries from the book, which I thought would be cool to read. So we got one from, the Rolling Stones. You might argue whether the Rolling Stones are, as they bill themselves, the world's greatest rock and roll band. However, few would disagree that they're one of the best. Aside from their sort of rivals, the Beatles, no other British invasion group wrote as many classic songs or had as far-reaching influence. While original manager Andrew Loog Oldham conceived of them as scruffy bad boys in contrast to the clean-cut Beatles, the Fab Four did the Stones a big solid early in their career. This is an interesting piece of trivia that not many people know. John Lennon and Paul McCartney gave Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and the band the song I Want to Be Your Man to record in 1963. Did you know that?
No.
Hit number 12 on the UK music charts. So there was this idea that they were enemies, that they hated each other, that they were in competition. But those guys would always say, here's the quote, they quote in the book. Keith Richards says, quote, "The thing is with the Beatles and us, it was always a very friendly relationship." So the media liked to play that up. The bad boys versus the good boys, He went on to say, quote, "It was also very cannily worked out because in those days singles were coming out every 6-8 weeks and we try and time it so that we didn't clash." That's pretty interesting that not many people know about that one. I picked another one that they include in the book on The Who. Back in the 60s and early 70s, The Who was one of the most dynamic rock bands in the world. They developed a reputation for destroying their equipment on stage and their hotel rooms off stage. They created plenty of stuff too, of course, including iconic songs like My Generation, Anyway, Anyhow, Anywhere, and I Can See for Miles. These singles and albums like The Who Sell Out 1967 and Tommy 1969 inspired numerous punk and hard rock groups to start kicking out the jams. While lead guitarist and songwriter Pete Townsend would become known as the main creative force behind The Who, lead singer Roger Daltrey actually served as the band's leader in the early days. It was Daltrey who originally formed the group in the late 1950s. And here's another, did you guys know this one? They went by the name The Detours at first, but they needed to change it after discovering a group with a similar moniker. Townsend wanted to call the band The Hair, but his roommate Richard Barnes suggested The Who. Time has shown which was the better choice. I knew one half of that. I knew about The Detours. I didn't know that he wanted to call it The Hair. That would not have worked.
I was surprised by Roger Daltrey being in charge originally.
Right, because
it was
it's
Pete Townsend.
Well, and nowadays it really is.
Oh yeah.
You know, Townsend really calls the shots, I think, you know, for the most part. Now here's a good one. Number 17 on the list. With an estimated 20,000 copies sold plus.
Wow.
The Giant Book of Christmas Sheet Music by Dan Coates.
Honestly, I think I have a book by Dan Coates somewhere. Some sheet music by Dan Coates. I think so. The name's very familiar.
I love it. I love it.
I think I need to get that because we play piano in the family here. So
yeah. They have all of the favorites. They have Blue Christmas, Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer.
Yeah.
There you go. You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch. It's in there. So yeah, that made number 7. You're a mean one, Mr. And if you are a musician and you can write a Christmas song that's a hit, cha-ching, cha-ching every Christmas.
Yeah. What is it with the story? I don't know if you ever read Dee Snider's biography. In it, he wrote a song. He wrote a Christmas song. Do you know the story?
Well, I know the song. Well, they made an album of Christmas songs where they.
No.
No, okay.
He wrote a Christmas song for his wife, Yvette. I think her name is. Anyway, he wrote a song. She said, you should write a Christmas song. So he wrote a song. He didn't know, like, he doesn't play instruments, right? He's completely just 100% a vocalist. So he recorded the song himself, did everything himself, but then he got like somebody to sing it. Like he got a woman, I think, to sing it. And then the song somehow gets into Celine Dion's lap. She records it. And it becomes one of the, I don't know, top 10 best-selling Christmas songs of all time. The check he got for it, because he wrote the song exclusively himself, he said, the house I live in, this is the house that Celine built.
Wow. Well, it's got to be one that we know of.
It is. Popular. It's called
Celine Dion sings it.
The Magic of Christmas Day. 8 million copies sold.
And that's sung by Celine Dion.
Mm-hmm.
Written by Dee Snider.
And she won a Grammy, I think, for it.
Wow. Celine Dion.
But written by she. So when she got the song and she showed interest in it, he was very adamant. Don't tell her who I am. See the name, but don't like.
She'll turn it down right away.
That scumbag from Twisted Sister.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. So she sang it, and it was her biggest Christmas hit she had. And it's one of those like Mariah Carey's Christmas song. It's like one of those, right?
Damn.
Yeah. So he wrote that. So he said, I literally paid for my house.
Sure. Oh yeah.
With one song. At the time, I think he was broke. So it came at a good time. At
number 16, Never a Dull Moment, 1971, the year that rock exploded. It's written by David Hepworth. Came out in 2017, 20,000 plus copies sold. This year, it's just 1971, an amazing year.
Yeah, look at everything packed into that year. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's a basis for a documentary on Apple TV Plus, which I believe is streaming now, that you can watch. Oh. It's called 1971, the year that music changed everything. So check that out. Nice. Rock's golden year, the year that saw the release of the indelible recordings of Led Zeppelin, David Bowie, The Who, Rod Stewart, Carole King, the Rolling Stones, and others, and produced more classics than any other year in rock history. Yeah, American Pie came out that year, Sly Stone's Family Affair.
That song alone, they could have just left everything else off, put that song on. That would have made it like one of the best-selling years in music history alone.
Don McLean's American Pie? Yeah. Sly Stone's
Stairway to Heaven was that year too.
Stairway to Heaven, Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, Joni Mitchell's Blue, The Who's Baba O'Reilly, many others. So the book covers all of it.
KTEL must have just been rocking that year.
Yep.
The best ofs.
Yeah.
Gonna release
yeah.
another KTEL album this year.
KTEL.
7 KTELs released in 71.
Yeah. So here's one where you talk about years that are important in rock history, but then there are locations. Book number 15, Laurel Canyon, The Inside Story of Rock and Roll's Legendary Neighborhood. And it's written by Michael Walker. It came out in 2007. Again, estimated 20,000 copies sold. 20,000 plus copies sold. Michael Walker's Laurel Canyon presents the inside story of the once hottest rock and roll neighborhood in L.A. In the late 60s, early 70s, an impromptu collection of musicians colonized a eucalyptus-scented canyon deep in the Hollywood Hills of Los Angeles and melded folk, rock, and savvy American pop into a sound that conquered the world as thoroughly as the songs of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones had before them. Some of we lost David Crosby recently, and he was part of that, the artist. So yeah, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, of course, Jim Morrison and the Doors, Joni Mitchell, John Mayall, the Mamas and the Papas, Carole King,
Carole
the
King's
Eagles,
a favorite. Oh man.
Frank Zappa. And I just interviewed Gary Graff, who wrote that great book on Alice Cooper.
Yep.
That's right. That's 75. And Alice Cooper was hanging around those parts in the late 60s.
Absolutely he was, yeah.
Yeah. Which is just fascinating.
Oh, great. Alice is over again.
Alice, yeah.
No, is that his legal name?
It is
now.
now.
It is. Yeah.
What was the original name? Was
Vincent
it like
Furnier.
Vincent Furnier, yeah.
The whole thing was it was the Alice Cooper band. He just liked the sound of that name, and he liked the fact that it's a female name, so it's gonna just leave people guessing, and it just came to them. They thought it was cool. And then he just became so synonymous with that name that he just decided, I'll be Alice Cooper.
After you had your episode about the Alice Cooper book, you know how many hours I spent watching Alice Cooper videos afterwards?
Yeah, doesn't it do that though? Or listening to his
totally.
music, right? Every time I interview these guys, then I'm just listening to that artist that they were
Yep.
about.
That's literally every time I listen to one of your episodes, I got to be careful because I know I'm going to go down a rabbit hole every time. It's like,
Exactly.
oh shit, okay.
Feed My Frankenstein?
Feed
Yeah.
Was that Wayne's World?
Yeah, and that album had Stevie Vai and Zach Wilde, all these guys on it. Yeah. All right, we're up to number 14. Here we go. Tranny, Confessions of Punk Rock's Most Infamous Anarchist Sellout by Laura Jane Grace and Dan Ozzie, 2016. Another estimated 20,000 plus copies sold. One of Billboard's 100 greatest music books of all time, the provocative, transgender advocate and lead singer of the punk rock band Against Me provides a searing account of her search for identity and her true self.
Wow.
This is impressive. I've heard about Laura Jane. This is cool that this is in the top 20.
Yeah.
Like, especially with the world the way it is sometimes and how close-minded it is. This makes me very happy that this is on the list.
Yep. It began in a bedroom in Naples, Florida, when a misbehaving punk teenager named Tom Gable, armed with nothing but an acoustic guitar and a head full of anarchist politics, landed on a riff. Gable formed Against Me and rocketed the band from its scrappy beginnings, banging on a drum kit made of pickle buckets to a major label powerhouse that critics have called this generation's The Clash.
Yep.
Since its inception in 1997, Against Me has been one of punk's most influential modern bands, but also one of its most divisive. Tranny is the intimate story of Against Me's enigmatic founder, weaving the narrative of the band's history as well as Grace's, with dozens of never-before-seen entries from the piles of journals Grace kept. More than a typical music memoir about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, although it certainly has plenty of that, Tranny is an inside look at one of the most remarkable stories in the history of rock. All right, here we go. Now, we mentioned Laurel Canyon. Book number 13 on the list, Detroit Rock City, The Uncensored History of Rock and Roll in America's Loudest City by Stephen Miller, 2013, estimated 20,000 plus copies sold. Detroit Rock City is an oral history of Detroit and its music told by the people who were on the stage, in the clubs, the practice rooms, studios, and in the audience, blasting the music out and soaking it up in every scene from 1967 to today. Included in the book, Ted Nugent, Dick Wagner. You guys know that name?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. For not just Alice, but Kiss.
For
He was
Kiss.
like a ghost guitarist for Ace. Yeah. James Williamson, Jack White, Susie Quattro, Andrew W.K., Brother Wayne Kramer, Iggy Pop. Detroit slices the rest of the land with way more than its share of the rock pie. A frenzied and schooled account of both past and present, calling in the halcyon days of the Grand Ballroom and the Easttown Theater, where national acts who came through were made to stand and deliver in the face of the always hard-hitting local support acts. And it gets into some of the clubs in the area that were famous. And we know what Detroit meant to Kiss.
Hell yeah.
Yep.
I as a kid, I wanted to go to Detroit to go listen to music because of the Alive.
Right.
Again, this has got to be the best city of all time.
Here's an excerpt. This is a cool excerpt from the book. John Sinclair, who was MC5's manager. So this is an excerpt talking about Russ Gibb. Russ Gibb was a promoter and owner of the Grand Ballroom, which is a major rock music venue in Detroit. So John Sinclair says, there was a guy named Neil. About 10 o'clock on Friday night at the Grand, Neil went up a staircase that extended from the floor of the Grand Ballroom. And he would appear at the top of the staircase and just hang out with a big smile. Everybody would go to Neil, and he'd give them samples of this week's acid, and all the acid heads would drop. The first band had played at 9. The second band played at 10:15. And at 11 o'clock, it was time for the MC5. Kick out the jams, motherfucker.
That's right.
When everybody was peaking on acid. Yeah. KJ Knight, Ted Nugent's drummer. Well, Ted Nugent and the Amboy Dukes.
Amboy Dukes, yeah.
The drummer of that band. Neil was this guy who would hand out hits of acid at the Grand Ballroom. He had a house downtown, and he hung with a girl named Dirty Debbie.
Oh my God.
We used to...
Did you go to Dallas? No.
She may have. We used to go down to his house in Detroit, and he would always turn us on to drugs. John Finley was a huge drug dealer back then. Finley and Rusty Day had the Day and Night Dealers Blues Band. One time I was backstage waiting to go on, and Alice was backstage, and I offered Alice Cooper a stick of gum, and he said, KJ, you got to promise me that this isn't coated with acid. Ted Nugent himself, the man. Cream magazine printed a story about how I shot 2 guys at the Grand Ballroom after they tried to steal my briefcase. I never shot anybody, but they printed it. There's journalism for you. Dennis Thompson from the MC5, the New Order. He's a drummer. We practiced at the Grand as well as being the house band for a while. Everybody used to come to the Grand to rehearse, from Janis Joplin to Procol Harum to whomever. And we used to take LSD, turn all the lights out, middle of the night, and go downstairs and just listen to the music. Couldn't see anybody. All you saw were those little lights on the amplifiers.
Wow.
This is a good number 12. I'm so glad this is on the list because I've had this book for years, and you guys know my background in radio, so I was just fascinated with this.
This
book
is on my list now.
Oh, you got to read it.
Oh, and this book's also been recommended by Stevie Van Zandt, by the way.
Yes. Got it right here in my hand. FM, The Rise and Fall of Rock Radio by Richard Neer. This came out in 2001, estimated 20,000 plus copies sold. Richard Neer, I believe, is still on the sports station WFAN in New York.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so he does sports. Just does a Saturday show. And he was one of the big FM radio jocks in New York. His brother, Dan Neer, was also at NEW. And I think Dan Neer is on Sirius Satellite Radio. As a young man, Richard Neer dreamed of landing a job at WNEW in New York, one of the revolutionary FM stations across the country that were changing the face of radio by rejecting strict formatting and letting disc jockeys play whatever they wanted. He felt that when he got there, he'd have made the big time. Little did he know, he'd have shaped rock history as well. And what fascinates me about this story is that what got me into FM rock radio was that I knew about this era. I mean, rock radio was an art form. There was a period there where there was no designs for it to be commercial.
Yep.
The government forced these owners to put something on their FM wave. They were all AM. No interest in doing anything on FM. They just didn't see the value in it, which is weird because it's stereo as opposed to mono.
Exactly.
So the first rock station, I got it here. There's the chapter's called We Built the City. The first rock station was from San Francisco. The guy's name is Tom Donahue. He's considered like the godfather he set up a station in the basement of a church. Legend has it that he was sitting in his pad with his second wife, Rachel, listening to the Doors' first album in 1967 when an epiphany came. Why isn't anyone playing this music on the radio? The story is partially true, but a man named Larry Miller was already on KMPX at night playing music in a freeform style months before Donahue came in. The station was foundering a brokered timeshare outlet that played to the city's Portuguese population by day. Donahue and his crew came aboard in April of 1967 and soon generated the same kind of buzz in the market that WORFM had done in New York.
Growing up, we only had AM radio was our rock station, CKCW, and if you wanted to,
CKCW.
and if you wanted to listen to FM, all there was country.
Yeah.
Or if you're at the very, very end of the dial, sometimes you get some opera.
Yeah, so here we go. This is one we're happy to see. Fellas, at number 11, Van Halen Rising, How a Southern California Backyard Party Band Saved Heavy Metal by Greg Renoff, 2015. Estimated
He's in the top 12.
Yeah. Hell yes.
I'm surprised I don't have this one.
I'm surprised you don't. I read this. I get it from I think I get it from the library or something.
Yeah.
Because I had to read it.
You'd love it, man. Todd,
oh, it's great. It's really well written.
Yeah, we all know about the Gene Simmons demos.
Yep.
Right.
And this is cool because this kind of takes you a little bit deeper into like behind the scenes. Gene discovers them and he wants to produce a demo and he wants to get the band signed. He wants to help them get signed. So here we are. So he invites them to come to New York. These guys never been to New York before. And it starts with, after they arrived in New York, Simmons got them rooms at the venerable Gotham Hotel. So they were smack dab in the middle of the city. Simmons recalled that for Van Halen, it was, oh my God, we're in New York. That first time feeling. I'm sure it was a little bit too much. They wandered around, went to record stores, and I was rehearsing to go on the road with Kiss. This is like 1976. Despite his responsibilities to Kiss, Simmons was determined to finish the demo. He booked time at Electric Lady Studios, a legendary facility that his band frequented. With the drums, bass, and most of the background vocals completed, Simmons planned to spend most of his studio time with Edward and Roth. He wanted Roth to lay down more lead vocals, and Edward wanted to overdub guitars, a task the guitarist had never undertaken before. On the day the sessions began, all four members of Van Halen walked into Electric Lady with Simmons. Michael Anthony in particular, was struck by the experience of standing in Jimi Hendrix's own studio. Best thing about going to New York, he says, was that we got to go into Electric Lady. They took us into the vault and showed us all these tape boxes of Hendrix recordings. All I could think about was all the amazing music on those reels. After Anthony sang a couple of backgrounds, he and Alex departed. Van Halen's rhythm section then explored the city. Anthony remembers, Alex and I didn't have much to do in New York except goof off. Alex and I stepped out of the hotel and into the street every day and had hot dogs from the vendors. We thought it was so fucking cool that you could get a hot dog right on the street, and he laughed.
Street meat.
Yeah. And then finished with this. While Alex and Anthony had fun in the Big Apple, Simmons, Edward, and Roth worked on the demo. After knocking out Roth's vocals, Simmons focused on thickening up Edward's contributions to songs like House of Pain, Big Trouble, Somebody Get Me a Doctor, and On Fire by having him double solos and add harmony lines. The guitarist recollected, it was my first attempt at overdubbing, which was very bizarre. I remember asking Gene before we started, can't I just play the way we do live? Edward said his first tries went poorly because he just didn't know how to overdub, since he hadn't even played with another guitarist.
So was that Eddie Kramer that was in the studio then?
No, he wasn't. There was a guy I talked to who worked as a producer / engineer with Fleetwood Mac, who was there at the Electric Lady Studios, and he wanted to tell me stories about it. He goes, I still remember 21-year-old Eddie walking down the hall.
Oh God.
Nervous kid walking down the hall, and he said, I see him plug in and start playing, and I was like, holy shit, But he never followed. I said, he goes, yeah, I'd love to tell you the stories, and I was emailing him like, let's do it for the VHND, but never happened. I'll try again. Nice guy. I won't say his name just because I don't want to get him in any hot water over it. But He was there, and he was like at the time just a young kind of, understudy engineer, I think, or something at the time. Anyway, that's the kind of stuff you get in Van Halen Rising.
Yeah, it's all great stuff. Like there's stuff I know a lot about Van Halen, and after I read this book, it's like I don't know as much as I thought I knew. Like there's so much great stuff in there.
Yeah, the backyard party stories and all that. Amazing.
I'm gonna let you know this is my second favorite Van Halen book.
What's the first?
Eruption.
Yeah. Brad Tolinski and Chris Gill.
Yeah,
yes.
That book made me cry. That book was so good.
Awesome. Chris Gill, I got to talk to recently for an article I did on Fair Warning, and I'll put that up in April. VHND.com. He had some brilliant observations of that album. The Booked on Rock podcast will return after this. Number 10. Here we go. Ready for the top 10, boys?
I'm ready.
Top 10.
Yeah, here we go. Number 10, selections from Rolling Stone magazine's 500 greatest songs of all time, Guitar Classics Volume 2, Classic Rock to Modern Rock. So that's from 2008, estimated 20,000 plus copies sold again. 67 of the best songs of the rock era, all chosen from Rolling Stone magazine's 500 greatest songs of all time. It covers the songs and also has the sheet music for the songs, which is cool. And, they get into some cool trivia from the songs. We'll just pick one out here, like Hotel California, rumored to be about heroin addiction or Satan worship, but Don Henley had more prosaic things on his mind. Quote, "We were all middle-class kids from the Midwest. Hotel California was our interpretation of the high life in Los Angeles. That doesn't preclude heroin or Satan, in parentheses. A problem arose when the band recording in Miami was unable to recreate Don Felder's 12-string intro and twin guitar coda. Panicked, Felder called his housekeeper in L.A., sent her digging through the tapes in his home studio so she could play his demo back over the phone." That's just one of the stories. Because he came up with, he was on the beach with his kids, and he just had his guitar there. And all of a sudden, it just came to him, that opening riff. and he sent the tape to Hanley. Insane, right? Number 9, The Wrecking Crew, The Inside Story of Rock and Roll's Best Kept Secret by Kent Hartman. 2013, another estimated 20,000 plus copies sold. If you were a fan of popular music in the 1960s and early 70s, you were a fan of The Wrecking Crew, whether you knew it or not. I'm
curious if Todd knows who The Wrecking Crew is.
If I heard one of their songs, I'd probably go, yeah, I know who they are.
Well, that's the thing. So they didn't record any songs under The Wrecking Crew. So they're on recordings by the Byrds, the Beach Boys, the Monkees, Simon and Garfunkel. They're on
studio.
Were they on Simon and Garfunkel? I believe so.
Yeah, they were. Yeah,
studio musicians. Is that why? Is that why they're not
at a particular studio? I think too, right?
Yeah, they're on Simon and Garfunkel's "Bridge Over Troubled Water."
Glenn Campbell. Oh yeah, there's a Glenn Campbell album. The Beach Boys wasn't the Beach Boys. It was one of the Wilson brothers, and the Wrecking Crew played all the instruments.
Yes, they're everywhere. Among others, I think. And they're everywhere. The Wrecking Crew tells the collective behind-the-scenes stories of the artists who dominated top 40 radio during the most exciting time in American popular culture. Let's get to number 8. Petty, the Biography by Warren Zanes from 2016. Estimated 50,000 copies sold. 50,000 plus. This is an exhilarating and intimate account of the life of music legend Tom Petty by an accomplished writer and musician who toured with Petty. No one other than Warren Zanes, rocker and writer and friend, could author a book about Tom Petty that is as honest and evocative of Petty's music and the remarkable rock and roll history he and his band helped to write. He does talk about being abused by his father. There are some great stories about the songs. There's a story about Full Moon Fever, Petty's biggest album, initially rejected by his label MCA, which led him to sign a secret deal with Warner Brothers. But this is the revealing thing, and nobody had known of this other than people within his circle until this book came out. Heroin abuse in the 90s by Tom Petty. Never thought that would have happened. Even his closest friends, like Stevie Nicks, was like, she couldn't believe it when she heard about it. This is a little bit of the the book here. The drugs played what Petty calls their dirty trick on him, initially relieving his depression and then compounding it. You start losing your soul, he says, obviously troubled by the memory and ashamed to have found himself there. You realize one day, shit, I've lost myself. I'm hanging out with people I wouldn't be seen with in a million years, and I have to get out of this. I wanted to quit. Using heroin went against my grain. I didn't want to be enslaved to anything. So I was always trying to figure out how to do less, and then that wouldn't work. Tried to go cold turkey, and that wouldn't work. It's an ugly fucking thing, really ugly. I fear that if I talk about it, people will think, well, I could do it and get off, but you can't. Very few people do.
Wow.
Now, number 7, another legendary artist, Do You Feel Like I Do? A memoir by Peter Frampton and Alan Light from 2020. Estimated 50,000 plus copies sold. From his early rise to fame to battles with his health, this revelatory memoir by legendary guitarist Peter Frampton celebrates the life of a rock icon. All right, Todd, you're a guitarist. Your thoughts on Peter Frampton as a guitarist?
Amazing. Peter Frampton live. I've listened to that, and it's an awesome album. Really good player.
The Talk Box.
Wah, 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 wah.
Was he the first guy to use the talk box?
No, and I think it might be in his book too. He had heard it before. I think he had heard it, somebody playing it in a radio commercial or jingle, and he thought it was cool. And then he ended up getting it and played around with it, that kind of thing. So
Kind of like Eddie with his 2-hand tapping. He wasn't the first one to do it, but he's the one who brought it out in the limelight.
Coming in at number 6, Acid for the Children, a memoir by Flea and Patti Smith, 2019.
Wait a minute, Flea and Patti Smith.
Yeah, but I don't think this is a different Patti Smith. I don't believe that. Estimated 100,000 plus copies sold, and Flea he's a trip, man.
Wait, it's actually saying it is the same Patti Smith. That's cool if they know each other.
Yeah, they know each other.
She's cool as hell.
Yep. Flea takes readers on a deeply personal and revealing tour of his formative years, spanning from Australia to New York City, finally to Los Angeles. It says, I was born Michael Peter Balzeri in Melbourne, Australia, October 16th, 1962. Most everyone who reads this book knows me as Flea. That name is in a far and distant future. As a kid, I am Michael Peter Balzeri, a small blonde child from Australia. Yeah, I could think all day long and still only come up with these hard facts from my first 4 years in Australia. Obscure as they may be, it's truly weird what makes a permanent impression on your psyche when you're a wee toddler. These are the things he learned. 6 things he lists. 1, wandering down the street and being mind blown by the sight of an empty swimming pool. What the fuck is that? 2, fighting with my sister Karen over possession of a cat and getting scratched. 3, my sweet Nana. This is so Flea, though. 4, humping things. Pillows, bar stools, anything I could hold between my legs at the proper angle for humping. My mother called it my quote-unquote bad habit, and I was scolded. 5, peeing on the floor, and when confronted about it, blaming it on our dog Bambi.
Oh, God.
And 6, a vague memory of my father going off to be in the Navy. I was told he slept on top of a bomb. I imagined it like in a Looney Tunes cartoon. Dad snoring atop a big black bomb in his sailor's outfit.
And it's just interesting that this book ranked so high on the bestseller list. But I was sure that Anthony Kiedis's book would have been in there too.
Yeah. Number 5, not surprising, Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen, 2016. 200,000 plus copies sold. Traces the Rock and Roll Hall of Famer's life from his childhood in a Catholic New Jersey family and the musical experiences that prompted his career to the rise of the E Street Band and the stories behind some of his most famous songs. He goes way back to some of the early years. He talks about the Catholic school that he went to. In the 50s, the nuns at St. Rose could play pretty rough. I'd once been sent down from the 8th grade to 1st for some transgression. I was stuffed behind a 1st grade desk and left there to marinate. I was glad for the afternoon off. Then I noticed someone's cufflink reflecting the sun upon the wall. I dreamily followed its light as it crawled up beyond the window toward the ceiling. I then heard the nun say to a beefy little enforcer in the center front row desk, Show our visitor what we do in this class to those who don't pay attention. This young student walked back to me with a blank expression on his face, and without a blink, let me have it, open-handed but full force across my face. As the smack rang through the classroom, I couldn't believe what had just happened. I was shaken, red-faced, and humiliated. Catholicism is it's important to what would become his songwriting, lyrical approach. He said, "This was the world where I found the beginnings of my song. In Catholicism, there existed the poetry, danger, and darkness that reflected my imagination and my inner self. I found a land of great and harsh beauty, of fantastic stories, of unimaginable punishment and infinite reward. It was a glorious and pathetic place I was either shaped for or fit right into. It has walked alongside me as a walking dream my whole life." Later he says, "The way I see it, we ate the apple, and Adam, Eve, the rebel Jesus in all his glory, and Satan are all part of God's plan to make men and women out of us, to give us the precious gifts of earth, dirt, sweat, blood, sex, sin, goodness, freedom, captivity, love, fear, life, and death, our humanity, and a world of our own." Damn good writer.
Hmm.
It's like he is with his lyrics.
He's written a couple of good songs, so
A few.
it translates, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, his songs are storytelling songs, right?
They
so
are, yep,
would
yeah.
the book be any less?
Yep.
You know,
Exactly. Now,
this one I've
can't
read.
be surprised by number 4. Yeah, Life by Keith Richards and James Fox, 2011, estimated 200,000 plus copies sold. The long-awaited autobiography of the guitarist, songwriter, singer, and founding member of the Rolling Stones. Ladies and gentlemen, Keith Richards. So there's some great excerpts in here. Now, but this is a great one about the great Rolling Stone bust, which was at Keith's home in February of 67. And the truth about the story that Marianne Faithfull was found naked, wrapped in a fur rug with a Mars bar protruding from her lady parts. The first part true, the last part myth. So here's what Keith wrote. There's a knock at the door. I look through the window.
Wait, hang on a sec. I think Todd should read this part with his
oh yes,
with the voice.
Can you read it?
Can you read that, Todd?
Please do.
I'll have to see if I can see it here.
Wait, let me zoom in there.
I mean, this is why you bring Todd on your show. It's
this is his moment to shine. Here we go.
There's a knock at the door. I look through the window, and there's this whole lot of dwarves outside. But they're all wearing the same clothes. They were policemen, but I didn't know it. They just look like very small people wearing dark blue with shiny bits and helmets. Wonderful attire. Am I expecting you? Anyway, come on in. It's a bit chilly out. They were trying to read a warrant to me. Oh, that's very nice, but it's a bit cold outside. Come on in and read it to me over the fireplace. I'd never been busted before, and I was still on acid. Oh, make friends, love. Not for me would there be. You cannot come in until I speak to my lawyer. It was, yeah, come on in. And then roughly disabused.
That's fucking great.
Can we take it from there?
By the fire.
By the way, that was not taken directly from Keith Richards' audiobook.
Oh,
If you were wondering
why
why it didn't sound like Keith.
just reading it in the car.
But yeah, he explains this whole
Close your
thing.
ears, kids.
I love it. He goes on to say, where is the part about the Mars bar? Yeah. He says, how the Mars bar got into the story, I don't know. There was one on the table. There were a couple because on acid, suddenly you get sugar lack and you're munching away. And so she's stuck forever with the story of where the police found that Mars bar. And you have to say she wears it well. But how that connotation came about and how the press managed to make a Mars bar on a table and Marianne wrapped in a fur rug into a myth is a kind of classic. So they had a woman police officer who took her upstairs and made her drop the rug. What else do you want to see? From there, it shows you what's in people's minds. The evening paper headlines are, Naked Girl at Stone's Party. Info directly from the police. But the Mars bar is a dildo? That's a rather large leap. Oh man,
It's like the story with the hammerhead shark and Zeppelin.
Zeppelin. Mhm.
Like
Hey, free publicity, right? Number 3, no surprise, because dirt sells, literally. The Dirt, Confessions of the World's Most Notorious Rock Band by Tommy Lee, Vince Neil, Mick Mars, and Nikki Sixx. This is from 02, estimated 200,000 plus copies sold. The outrageous, legendary, no holds barred autobiography of Motley Crue. By the way, did you guys hear the rumor that Mick Mars didn't really retire? That Tommy and Nikki want to get rid of Vince. Mick Mars was pissed, and they told Mick, sorry. This was in one website that reported it, and that Mick said, no, well then fuck it, I'm out, and that they're gonna just keep keep Vince around for the European dates, and then bring in
Karabi?
Scott Stapp. That's
What?
that's the name, yeah. That there's it's you can find it on the web. There's only one website that's reported it. Vince is, he's got the weight issues, and he's just they're not happy about that, and he's
But
tried to
Scott
lose
Stapp's even less reliable.
right, but he's not just not the image of the band, and it's too late. Your people are there to see the original 4.
Todd, Scott Stapp is the singer for Creed.
Yeah, I forget. Yeah,
Totally different.
girls.
Take a walk on the wild side.
Yeah, right. I can't remember the website.
Oh my god.
Are you looking for it, Sean?
Yeah, I am.
Just type in Motley
Now it's like,
Crue,
come on, man.
Scott Stapp. Just put that in. That's
No,
probably,
I know Karabi would never go back.
no.
Karabi was the guy that replaced
Yeah, he's
they
pissed at them
replaced
too, because
the
they
first
pretended like he never existed.
Oh, Metal Addicts.
Metaladdicts.com. Yeah,
Come on. Like, that's so unbelievable.
yeah.
You
Well,
think you think Nicky's gonna work with like Staff's very unreliable. And
Right.
he'll say that himself. Like,
Mental health issues that he's had. Yeah,
I mean, if you want a doppelganger, you could use Bret Michaels, I guess.
yeah.
actually,
It's just
actually,
not.
that's not a bad idea.
They're just
They're the
not
same era.
At least it'd be
There's-
interesting.
Yeah, they're just not at the point where you can take that kind of risk. I mean, if you want to try to find a singer of a Motley Crue tribute band, I suppose, even that, it's like, you can't.
Did you hear the story on our episode? We had Danny Roy on. He was talking about the stadium show with Motley Crue and Def Leppard.
No.
Yeah, everyone's using backing tracks.
Okay.
Like
Even
nothing
Def
live,
Leppard?
especially Def Leppard.
Okay.
They're and not just the music, or sorry, not just the vocals. It's everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it skipped twice live.
How did that not get out? How did the media not get all
I don't
over
know.
that? I love Def
Well,
Leppard.
Journey did it with their singer. They replaced him, and they kept touring.
Sure.
They did pretty
You could
good.
do that. Yeah, but that's the thing. You'd rather do that than find a Vince Neil sound alike than try to do the whole reinvention like you did with Karabi, because that didn't work then, and it's sure as hell not going to work now.
Karabi's such a better singer, though.
Oh, he is, and but
Great
you
singer.
know how that is. It's people, they remember Vince. That's they're this
Yeah.
is reliving
That's what they fell in love
their
with,
youth.
was that.
Yeah, they made an attachment to that lineup.
Same with Styx.
Right. Well, yeah, Styx has a guy who sounds like Dennis DeYoung.
Canadian guy, Larry
Foreigner?
Gowan.
Okay. Foreigner, same thing. Yeah. Yeah. So highlights from this book. One of Tommy Lee's girlfriends in the band's early days, nicknamed Bullwinkle by the other guys, had a raging temper. One time she threw a fire extinguisher through the band's apartment window when Lee locked her outside. The band's Sunset Strip apartment had a major roach problem. They couldn't afford pesticides, so they'd use lighters and hairspray to exterminate the bugs. Or, if they were using the oven, they'd leave it on high for 10 minutes to kill any roaches inside first. The LA County Department of Health Services had to force the band members to remove all the garbage they let pile up on the back patio of their Sunset Strip apartment. In those early days, they didn't buy toilet paper to save money. Instead, they used socks, band flyers, or magazines.
Oh,
Yeah.
crazy.
One time, Tommy Lee betted a lady just to drive her Jaguar. while Nikki Sixx and Vince Neil watched them in action. Yeah. Nikki and Vince and Tommy once doused a tree in their courtyard and set it on fire just for fun. McMars had a habit of biting Lee's nipple. Nice. Tommy Lee's nipple.
Okay.
Sean, you do that, right? You bite Todd's nipple?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Man.
Yeah. At their first show at the LA Club Star, would a guy in the crowd spit a loogie that landed on Vince's white leather pants. Vince hopped off the stage and started fighting him. Nikki backed him up, cracking his bass guitar against another guy's shoulder. And last one, Vince Neil once bought cocaine from a drag queen for $20 that turned out to be baby powder. When he couldn't get his cash back, he got into a big bar fight with a dealer. Just some of the outrageous moments from the dirt. The Booked on Rock podcast will return after this. Number 2 is Marilyn Manson.
Oh, boy.
The Long Hard Road Out of Hell by Marilyn Manson and Neil Strauss. 1999 this came out. Estimated 200,000 copies sold. Plus.
Yeah, I read this one.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Very poorly written biography. Except for the first chapter of the book, it might be the best thing I've ever read. And then nothing. It's not very good.
Yeah. It's described as the best-selling autobiography of America's most controversial celebrity icon, Marilyn Manson. Shocking and candid memoir, he takes readers from backstage to jail cells, from recording studios to emergency rooms, from the pit of despair to the top of the charts, and recounts his metamorphosis from a frightened Christian schoolboy into the most feared and revered music superstar in the country. The chapter starts with one of the chapters. The end of the world didn't come when it was supposed to. I was brainwashed to believe in seminars every Friday at Heritage Christian School that all the signs were there. You will know the beast has risen up out of the ground because there will be heard everywhere a great gnashing of teeth, Miss Price would warn in her sternest, most ominous voice to rows of cowering sixth graders. And everyone, children and parents alike, will suffer. Those that don't receive the mark, the number of his name, will be decapitated before their families and neighbors. Fucking teacher told us to them?
Yeah, man.
Jesus Christ.
So we were in Catholic, like our schools were Catholic schools, but they weren't like the same. But I remember I spoke up in whatever, not Bible class or catechism or whatever they called it. And I spoke up because I felt the imagery that the teachers were giving was too much. And I got in trouble for that.
Wow. Yeah, man. I went to Catholic school, junior high. Not surprising to hear. Okay, so Todd, here we go. Now let's before we get to number 1, let's just do a rundown of 19 or 20 through 2. Okay, so we had at number 20 Stevie Van Zandt's 2021 memoir, Unrequited Infatuations. At number 19, The History of Rock and Roll, Volume 1, 1920 to 1963 by Ed Ward from 2017. At number 18, Rock Trivia Madness, 60s to 90s Rock Music Trivia and Amazing Facts by Bill O'Neill and Ray Connor, 2017. At number 17, The Giant Book of Christmas Sheet Music by Dan Coates.
My favorite.
Oh, man. Number 16, Never a Dull Moment, 1971, the year that rock exploded by David Hepworth from 2017. 15, Laurel Canyon, The Inside Story of Rock and Roll's Legendary Neighborhood by Michael Walker from 2007. Number 14, Tranny, Confessions of Punk Rock's Most Infamous Anarchist Sellout by Laura Jane Grace and Dan Ozzie from 2016. Number 13, Detroit Rock City, The Uncensored History of Rock and Roll in America's Loudest City by Stephen Miller, 2013. At number 12, FM, The Rise and Fall of Rock Radio by Richard Neer from 2001. At number 11, Van Halen Rising, How a Southern California Backyard Party Band Saved Heavy Metal by our good friend Greg Renoff, 2015. Number 10, Selections from Rolling Stone Magazine's 500 Greatest Songs of All Time, Guitar Classics, Volume 2, Classic Rock to Modern Rock from 2008. And then we get to number 9, The Wrecking Crew, The Inside Story of Rock and Roll's Best Kept Secret by Kent Hartman from 2013. Number 8, Petty, The Biography by Warren Zanes from 2016. Number 7, Do You Feel Like I Do? A memoir by Peter Frampton and Alan Light from 2020. Number 6, Acid for the Children, a memoir by Flea and Patti Smith, 2019. Number 5 is Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen from 2016. Number 4, Life by Keith Richards and James Fox from 2011. Number 3, The Dirts, Confessions of the World's Most Notorious Rock Band by Tommy Lee, Vince Neil, Mick Mars, and Nikki Sixx, with foreword by Scott Stapp. Number 2, The Long Hard Road Out of Hell by Marilyn Manson and Neil Strauss from 1999. Okay, Todd, what do you think would be the best-selling rock music book of all time?
I would have to say, and I'm assuming this would be rock, either Fleetwood Mac or ABBA.
Wow, Sean, he actually is in the ballpark there.
Ooh.
With Fleetwood Mac. Okay. Daisy Jones and the Six, a novel by Taylor Jenkins Reid from 2019. It's inspired by Fleetwood Mac.
Oh,
It's been turned into a 5-part miniseries and will premiere on March the 3rd on Amazon Prime Video, which has, so there's been a lot of sales leading up to it, but I'm sure now because of this, it's getting a lot of press. So even more copies are being sold. It estimates at 1 million plus copies sold.
That's ridiculous.
A
Wow.
gripping
I can't
novel.
believe
Now,
that.
so if you want to go with nonfiction, then we would have to go with Marilyn Manson, but this counts. Gripping novel about the whirlwind rise of an iconic 1970s rock group and their beautiful lead singer, revealing the mystery behind their infamous breakup. Here's the book promo. Everyone knows Daisy Jones and the Six, but nobody knows the reason behind their split at the absolute height of their popularity until now. Daisy is a girl coming of age in LA in the late 60s, sneaking into clubs on the Sunset Strip, sleeping with rock stars, and dreaming of singing at the Whiskey A Go-Go. The sex and drugs are thrilling, but it's the rock and roll she loves most. By the time she's 20, her voice is getting noticed, and she has the kind of heedless beauty that makes people do crazy things. Also getting noticed is The Six, a band led by the brooding Billy Dunn, who I'm assuming that is inspired by Lindsey Buckingham.
I would think so, yeah.
Yes, and obviously Daisy is Stevie Nicks. On the eve of their first tour, his girlfriend Camila finds out she's pregnant, and with the pressure of impending fatherhood and fame, Billy goes a little wild on the road. Daisy and Billy cross paths when a producer realizes that the key to supercharged success is to put the two together. What happens next will become the stuff of legend. The making of that legend is chronicled in this riveting and unforgettable novel. I'm reading it like Todd. Written as an oral history of one of the biggest bands of the 70s. In a world where... No. Taylor Jenkins Reid is a talented writer who takes her work to a new level with Daisy Jones and the Six, brilliantly capturing a place and time in an utterly distinctive voice. And there you have it, folks. The 20 best-selling rock books of all time. Guys, this was fun.
So I have a question for you. So
Yeah.
this is a list based on sales and stuff.
Yeah.
If you had to list your favorite rock book of all time,
It's going to be, I have to go with Greg Renoff's book.
yeah, the Van Halen Rising.
Yep. And right behind it is Eruption. Because I'm thinking I have so many of these books now. You know, I mean, once I started with the podcast, it's been a couple of years now. I read most or all the books to prepare. So there's so many of them. So it's hard to, you know, trust me, there's a lot of great ones. And I'll tell you, Brian J. Cramp's book on Cheap Trick is awesome. That's a kick-ass book.
Oh yeah, that's one I got to get to.
And James Campion's book on Kiss's Destroyer album, awesome. Greg Prado's book on Kiss Unmasked in the 80s.
Yeah, I got it right up here.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So there's so many of them, but because I'm such a Van Halen fan, I gravitate to Greg's book. There you go.
What about this one?
What do you got?
You've read
Oh
this?
yeah, the Jim Morrison. I read that one. Yeah, which is the one that
No one
inspired
gets
the
out of
movie.
here alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, you know what? This is one I've gone back and read multiple times. And Hammer of the Gods is the other one I've gone back and
That's
read.
the other
multiple
one
times.
that's legendary, which I'm surprised those books don't make this list. I don't know how they compiled the list, but If you have a problem with the list, basically what we're saying is take it up with bookauthority.org. It's their
Make your list. Post your list.
Post your list. Yes. All right, guys. So let's plug your podcast. Where can we find you? What do you talk about on the show? You cover it all.
Well, you can reach us at SeanMcGinity.ca. That's SeanMcGinity.ca.
And I will have that link in the show notes page.
Yeah, and it's the show is Todd and I. We pick a topic every week. He's the fret. I'm the geek. We take our two different perspectives and kind of talk about various topics, invariably talking about music because that's what we both love.
And plug your upcoming music, right?
Oh,
Dome.
yeah. So
Dome is the name of the band.
The band, well,
or
it's kind of a band.
The project, or
it's Todd and I. It's called Bros Before Gin. So it's basically the album is songs that we recorded on the side from other projects that we were involved with. Just we record a couple songs here, record a couple songs there, and it's kind of a compilation of stuff we worked on since going back as far as 97, I believe.
Yeah, it's a mishmash.
Yeah.
Called the Mishmash album.
Yeah, the Mishmash. Well, it's actually called the Kitchen Sink.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. This was awesome.
Yes, excellent. Thanks for having us.
Well, that was an adventure.
That was quite a show you put on today.
Well, let me just close this conversation by saying you are one unique individual.